I never should have come to the royal gathering. Wolves like me, the broken ones, the incomplete, belonged in the forgotten corners of the realm, not standing beneath vaulted ceilings etched with ancient pack sigils, while the most powerful alphas in the kingdom measured each other with smiles that promised violence. I was already planning my escape route when I felt it. That familiar ice sliding down my spine that used to mean I'd said the wrong thing, looked the wrong way, breathed too loudly. Matthew was here. I spotted him near the marble columns, his frame half hidden in shadow, but his eyes, those eyes I'd once thought were loving, locked onto me like a predator sighting prey. The way his jaw tensed sent memory flashing through me. His hands on my shoulders, his voice in my ear. You'll never shift properly. You're defective. No one else would want something as broken as you. Panic seized my chest. If he reached me, if he dragged me back in front of all these powerful wolves and exposed my shame, that I couldn't complete my transformation, that I froze halfway between human and wolf like some cursed thing, I'd become a spectacle. Worse, I'd be his again. I stumbled backward and collided with something solid. A wall of muscle and leather armor. A hand caught my elbow, steadying me with a strength that felt both controlled and absolute. I looked up into eyes like liquid amber framed by war braids and midnight black armor etched with silver, and every shred of dignity I'd salvaged shattered under the weight of my desperation. "Please marry me," I whispered, my voice cracking. "My ex is watching and I need him to think I belong to someone he can't touch." The stranger's expression shifted. Surprise, then something darker, more calculating. One corner of his mouth lifted in a smile that could have meant anything. "Is that so?" he murmured, his voice like smoke and thunder. Then he cupped my face in his calloused hands and kissed me. The hall went absolutely silent. His mouth was firm against mine, the kiss commanding but strangely gentle, nothing like Matthew's bruising possessiveness. His thumb brushed my cheekbone as if I were something precious, not broken. Power radiated from him in waves that made my incomplete wolf cower and whimper, even as something else in my blood, something I'd never understood, stirred awake, curious. When he finally pulled back, the silence was suffocating. Every wolf in the royal gathering stood frozen. Conversations died mid-sentence. Wine glasses hung suspended halfway to lips. I could feel hundreds of eyes burning into my skin, cataloging every detail, every flaw, wondering what I'd done to earn this. The warrior. Joe, I would learn later, Joe Nightclaw, the Alpha King whose name was spoken with equal parts reverence and fear across every territory, kept one arm curved around my waist like he'd held me 1,000 times before. "Well," Joe said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the shocked silence, "that settles the matter, doesn't it, Counselor Thorne?" I followed his gaze to a silver-haired alpha near the dais, his face flushed with barely suppressed fury. The same alpha who'd been shouting about taxation disputes and territory rights 30 seconds before my world tilted sideways. Counselor Thorne's jaw worked. "Settles what exactly, Your Majesty?" "The question of the disputed northern territories." Joe's tone was almost casual, but I felt the coiled tension in his frame, the readiness of a warrior who'd fought 100 battles. "You claimed no bloodline ties connected those lands to the crown. Clearly I've just discovered a personal interest that changes the situation. The territories remain under royal oversight until we resolve the lineage matter properly." Brilliant. Ruthless. He'd used us, to force a political stalemate in an argument I didn't even understand. Thorne looked like he wanted to shift and challenge right there, but 3 other council members were already nodding, relieved to avoid bloodshed tonight. The tension in the room redirected, reframed, and I realized I'd just watched the Alpha King move his enemies like pieces on a game board. "Who is she?" someone called out from the crowd. "A wolf under my protection," Joe said simply, as if that explained everything. His hand settled at the small of my back, a gesture so casual yet so possessive that my traitorous body leaned into the solid warmth of him. "Anyone who wishes to dispute that is welcome to speak with me. Privately." The threat in those last words could have frozen summer. Movement caught my eye. Matthew stepping forward from the shadows, his face contorted with rage. Our eyes met across the marble floor and I saw the promise burning there. "This isn't over. You're still mine. You'll always be mine." But a scarred warrior with ice-chip eyes, Joe's beta Marcus, was already intercepting him. Words were exchanged too low to hear. Matthew's hands clenched into fists, his wolf rising close to the surface, but he backed down. He melted back into the crowd with one final searing look that made nausea curl in my stomach. "Breathe," Joe murmured against my ear so quietly only I could hear. "He can't reach you here." I hadn't realized I'd stopped breathing. The gathering slowly came back to life around us. Whispers rippled through the hall like wind through tall grass. Alphas repositioned themselves, reassessing hierarchies and alliances. I'd become the story everyone would tell tomorrow. The mystery wolf who'd caught the Alpha King's attention. The symbol of his favor, his protection, his claim. In the Moonstone Court, symbols didn't tend to survive long. "Can you walk?" Joe asked, still in that low, private tone that somehow felt more intimate than the kiss. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Good. We're leaving before someone decides to do something foolish." He released me slowly but kept my hand tucked into the crook of his elbow, leading me through the crowd as if I'd always belonged at his side. Wolves parted before us. Some bowed their heads. Others stared with naked calculation. I felt their eyes taking inventory, my plain gray-green cloak, my blonde braided hair, the way my hand trembled slightly against the Alpha King's armored forearm, measuring, judging, wondering what I'd done to capture his attention and how they might exploit it. The walk to the side exit felt like crossing an entire continent. Marcus fell into step behind us, a silent guardian. The weight of 100 stairs pressed against my back like physical things. And somewhere in that crowd, Matthew watched, plotting how to reclaim what he believed he owned. I'd begged a stranger to marry me to escape my past. I had no idea I'd just bound myself to a king, or that my broken wolf carried a secret that would either save his kingdom or destroy it entirely. But before we continue Sarah's journey from Broken Wolf to Silver Queen, if you're howling for more stories like this, hit that like button and let the algorithm know you're part of the pack. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss when we drop the next chapter of forbidden romance, fated mates, and powerful transformations. And drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're watching from. I want to know where my pack members are. Are you team, protect Sarah at all costs, or team she should have run when she had the chance? Now let's see what happens when the Alpha King discovers who Sarah truly is. The private council chamber Joe led me to was smaller than I expected, lit by oil lamps that cast dancing shadows across maps and treaty documents scattered over a massive oak table. Marcus closed the door behind us with a solid thunk that made my heart jump. "You can let go now," Joe said, releasing my hand. "We're alone." I pulled my cloak tighter around myself, suddenly aware of how small I was compared to both of them. Joe moved to a side table and poured something amber into 3 glasses. Marcus leaned against the door, arms crossed, studying me like I was a puzzle he didn't want to solve. "So," Joe said, offering me a glass. I took it with shaking hands. "Sarah Peters, yes?" I made some inquiries during our exit. My throat went dry. "You know my name." "I know several things." He took a slow sip, those amber eyes never leaving mine. "I know Matthew Andrea has been searching for you for 3 months. I know his family controls the southern timber trade and half the river ports. And I know you just handed me leverage I didn't have an hour ago." He paused, then added more softly, "I also know you smell like pine smoke and winter rain, and that you were genuinely terrified back there." He crept up my neck. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize for surviving." His voice carried an edge. "You did what you needed to do. As it happens, so did I." Marcus made a low sound in his throat. "Your Majesty, the Andreas won't take this lying down. Matthew's father sits on the Merchant Council. They'll call it an insult, a royal overstep into family affairs. Let them." Joe set his glass down with deliberate calm. "The boy's been sniffing around our borders for months, making alliances, spreading coin where it doesn't belong. Using Sarah gives me the excuse I need to watch him more closely." Using Sarah. The words landed like stones in my stomach. Of course. This was political. I was political. "The marriage," I managed. "You don't actually have to." "Oh, but I do." Joe's smile was sharp. "I claimed you as my intended mate in front of the entire court. To walk that back now would make me look weak, indecisive. Worse, it would leave you vulnerable." He moved closer and I caught the scent of leather and steel and something wild underneath. "Unless you'd prefer I release you? Send you back out there where Matthew's waiting?" The thought made my wolf whimper. I shook my head. "Then we have an understanding." Joe extended his hand. I'll protect you from your ex and whatever demons you're running from. In return, you play the role of my intended until I decide we've squeezed enough advantage from this situation. After that, you're free to go wherever you wish." I stared at his outstretched hand. Everything in me screamed this was a mistake, that I was trading one cage for another. But what choice did I have? I clasped his hand. His grip was warm and steady, and something passed between us. Not the mate bond, not yet, but a promise sealed nonetheless. Marcus pushed off the door. "There's a problem, Your Majesty." "Isn't there always?" Matthew didn't leave. "He's waiting in the outer courtyard with 6 of his father's guards." Marcus's expression darkened. "He's demanding you return his property." The journey to Nightclaw Fortress took 2 days by horseback, cutting through pine forests so dense the sunlight barely reached the ground. Joe had dealt with Matthew that night. I never learned exactly what was said, only that Matthew left the royal gathering with blood on his knuckles and murder in his eyes. Marcus had warned me not to ask questions I didn't want answers to. Now, as we crested the final ridge, I saw it. The fortress rose from the mountain like it had been carved from the stone itself, all black granite and iron, with towers that clawed at the sky. Snow dusted the parapets even though it was early autumn. This was old power, ancient power, the kind that didn't bend or break. "Home sweet home," Joe said, though his tone suggested the sweetness was debatable. The gates opened before we reached them, massive things that groaned like dying giants. Wolves lined the courtyard. Guards, servants, warriors, all watching me with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. I kept my chin up even as my wolf cowered inside me, overwhelmed by the concentrated dominance pressing down from every direction. A woman was waiting on the steps. She had Joe's amber eyes but sharper features, her dark hair cropped short like a warrior's, and she radiated the kind of confidence I'd never possessed. "So this is her," she said, circling me like I was livestock at market. "The mysterious wolf who bewitched our king in under 5 minutes. I'm Kira, Joe's sister and General Payne in his royal ass." "Sarah," I managed. "I know who you are. What I don't know is what you are." Kira leaned closer, inhaling. Her eyes narrowed. "It's wrong. Not bad, just wrong. Like a storm that hasn't broken yet." "Kira," Joe's voice carried warning. "What?" "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." She stepped back, arms crossed. "She's hiding something." "We're all hiding something," Joe said tiredly. "Sarah, Marcus you've met. This charming creature is my sister. Try not to let her scare you off before dinner." "No promises," Kira muttered, but there was something almost protective in the way she positioned herself between me and the watching crowd. An older woman emerged from the fortress entrance, moving with the quiet grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime tending to others. Silver threaded through her black hair, and her eyes, a striking pale green, seemed to see straight through me. "Elena," Joe said with genuine warmth. "Our pack healer. Elena, this is Sarah Peters." Elena's gaze locked on mine, and I felt something shift in the air between us. Her expression changed, a flicker of recognition or shock or fear. I couldn't tell which. "Hey, she asked, extending her hand. I wasn't sure what she was asking permission for, but something told me refusing would be worse. I placed my hand in hers. The moment our skin touched, her eyes went wide. Her grip tightened almost painfully. "Goddess above," Elena whispered. "Child, what are you?" My wolf stirred for the first time since we'd arrived, pressing against my skin like it wanted out, wanted to run, wanted to hide. But there was nowhere to hide from the way Elena was staring at me now, with wonder and something that looked dangerously close to fear. "I don't understand," I said, my voice small. Elena released my hand slowly, never breaking eye contact. "Your wolf. It's not broken." The words hung in the air like an executioner's blade. "What?" Joe stepped closer, suddenly alert. "It's not broken," Elena repeated, her voice stronger now, more certain. "It's caged. And whatever's locked inside her is older than any of us." Joe dismissed everyone except Marcus, and even Marcus left after one look at Joe's face. Then it was just the 2 of us in his private study, surrounded by weapons on the walls and maps that showed territories I'd never traveled to. "Show me," Joe said. My hands went cold. "Show you what?" "Your shift. Elena says you're caged. I need to understand what that means." He moved closer and I found myself backing toward the window. Sarah, if something's wrong with your wolf, if there's a threat. I'm not a threat, I snapped, the words sharper than I intended. I'm just broken. Elena doesn't seem to think so. Elena doesn't know me. My voice cracked. You don't know me. Matthew knew me. He knew exactly what I was. Joe's expression shifted, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. Tell me about Matthew. Why? So you can use it against him politically? The bitterness tasted like ash on my tongue. I'm already your bargaining chip, Your Majesty. You don't need my trauma too. That's not. He stopped, jaw tight, then tried again. Tell me, because I need to understand what you're afraid of. The gentleness in his voice undid me. I sank into the chair by the fireplace, pulling my knees to my chest like I could make myself small enough to disappear. Matthew and I were together for 2 years, I whispered. He said he loved me, that my condition didn't matter. When I tried to shift, when I'd freeze halfway and the pain would come, he'd hold me after. Tell me it was okay. I laughed, but it sounded hollow. Then one day he stopped being kind about it. Started saying maybe if I tried harder, if I wasn't so weak, so pathetic, so broken, maybe then I could be a real wolf. Joe's hands clenched at his sides, but he stayed silent. He'd make me try in front of his friends. As entertainment. They'd laugh when I'd seize up, when I'd scream from the pain of being stuck between forms. Tears burned my eyes. He said no one else would ever want me. That I should be grateful he tolerated a defective wolf like me. Sarah. I started believing him. The words tumbled out now, unstoppable. I believed I was wrong, cursed, that the goddess herself had marked me as a mistake. So I stopped trying. I stopped hoping. And when I finally ran, part of me thought maybe he was right. Maybe I deserved. Stop. Joe knelt in front of me, his hands covering mine. Listen to me. Whatever Matthew told you, whatever he made you believe, it was a lie. He wanted you broken so you'd never leave. That's not love. That's possession. I wanted to believe him. Goddess, I wanted to. Try to shift, Joe said quietly. Right now. Let me see. I can't. Try. I closed my eyes and reached for my wolf. She stirred sluggishly, reluctant, afraid. I pushed harder, calling her forward, and felt the familiar pull. My bones began to crack, fur rippling beneath my skin, and then the cage slammed shut. Pain exploded through me, white-hot and absolute. I felt myself seizing, my body locked between forms, every nerve screaming. Through the agony I heard Joe's voice, felt his hands steadying me, but I couldn't focus, couldn't breathe, couldn't. Then I saw it in the mirror across the room. My eyes, wide and terrified, but beneath my skin, silver light, pulsing like a second heartbeat, pushing against the cage that held it prisoner. Joe saw it too. His sharp intake of breath cut through my pain. What in the goddess's name are you? He whispered. The light flared brighter and something inside me woke up. The oracle arrived at midnight, when the fortress was silent except for the wind howling through the mountain passes. Elena woke me from fitful sleep, her face pale in the candlelight. She's here, was all she said. They'd gathered in the circular chamber at the heart of the fortress. Joe, Marcus, Kira, Elena, and now me, wrapped in a borrowed cloak that smelled like pine and smoke. The oracle stood in the center, so ancient I couldn't guess her age. Her eyes were clouded white, but they fixed on me the moment I entered, as if she could see straight through flesh and bone to whatever writhed beneath. Come closer, child. Her voice rattled like dry leaves. I moved forward on unsteady legs. Joe started to follow, but the oracle raised one gnarled hand. The king stays where he is. This one walks alone. Joe's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. I felt his eyes on my back as I crossed the circle to stand before the oracle. She reached out, her fingers cold as winter when they pressed against my forehead. The world lurched sideways. I saw forests burning, wolves running beneath a silver moon, heard howling that sounded like songs and screams and prayers all at once. A woman with my face but older, stronger, standing on a battlefield with light pouring from her skin like liquid starlight. Then darkness, centuries of it, bloodlines dying out one by one until only whispers remained. The oracle released me and I staggered, would have fallen if Marcus hadn't caught my elbow. Silver-born, the oracle breathed and the room went deathly quiet. I never thought I'd see one in this lifetime. What does that mean? Joe demanded, moving to my side despite the oracle's earlier command. It means she is the last of a bloodline we thought extinct 300 years ago. The oracle's blind eyes never left me. The silver wolves were the first, the purest. They could shift not just between human and wolf, but into pure light itself. They were judges, warriors, healers, and they were hunted to extinction because of what they could become. Could become? Kira asked sharply. Weapons. The oracle's voice carried weight like a funeral bell. In the wrong hands, a silver-born can be twisted into something that destroys rather than protects. The last of them burned half the eastern territories before she was stopped. My mouth went dry. I can't even shift properly. Because you've been taught to fear your own power, the oracle said almost kindly. The trauma, the abuse, the belief that you are broken. These things have caged your wolf, locked her away where she cannot hurt you. But she is their child. She has always been there, waiting for you to be strong enough to set her free. The prophecy, Elena whispered. Tell them the prophecy. The oracle's expression darkened. When the silver-born walks again among the wolves, she will stand at the crossroads of fate. One path leads to salvation, a new age of unity and strength. The other leads to annihilation, death on a scale this realm has not seen since the ancient wars. She turned her blind gaze toward Joe. And the choice Alpha King will be determined by how she is treated. Cage her, control her, use her as a tool, and she will become the very weapon you fear. But treat her as an equal, help her heal, give her the freedom to choose her own path. And Joe's voice was tight. And she might just save us all. The oracle stepped back. Or doom us. The future is not written, only offered. But know this, every wolf in this realm will want to claim her or kill her. And the man who calls himself her ex will stop at nothing to have her back. He knows what she is. He's always known. Ice flooded my veins. Matthew knows. His family has searched for silver-born bloodlines for generations. Why do you think he chose you? Why do you think he tried so hard to break you? The oracle's smile was sad. He wanted you weak enough to control, powerful enough to use. And now that you've escaped, now that the Alpha King has claimed you, he'll come for her, Joe finished, his voice lethal. The oracle nodded. He already is. Joe woke me before dawn, his knock sharp against my door. Training yard. 5 minutes. I'd barely slept after the oracle's revelations, my mind spinning with prophecies and extinct bloodlines and the knowledge that Matthew had always known what I was. But Joe's tone left no room for argument. The training yard was carved from mountain stone, open to the sky where stars still glimmered. Joe stood in the center wearing leather armor, 2 wooden practice swords in his hands. Marcus watched from the shadows, arms crossed. I don't know how to fight, I said. I know. That's why we're starting now. Joe tossed me one of the swords. I caught it clumsily. Matthew kept you weak deliberately. Every time you suppressed your instincts, every time you doubted yourself, you fed the cage around your wolf. We're going to undo that. By hitting each other with sticks? By teaching you to trust yourself. He circled me slowly, predator assessing prey. Your body knows how to fight. Your wolf knows. But you've spent years ignoring those instincts because someone told you they were wrong. Block. He swung. I barely got the sword up in time. The impact jolted through my arms. Again. He came at me faster this time. I blocked, stumbled, blocked again. My muscles screamed. Sweat soaked through my shirt despite the mountain cold. Stop thinking, Joe commanded. Feel. Your wolf is trying to help you, let her. I can't. You can. He pressed harder, his strikes coming from angles I couldn't predict. Stop apologizing for taking up space. Stop making yourself small. Fight back. Something in his words cracked open a door I'd kept locked. I felt my wolf stir, tentative, offering her strength. I stopped retreating and swung. Joe blocked easily, but his smile was approving. Better. Again. We trained until sunrise, then through it. Days blurred together. Combat in the mornings, meditation in the afternoons, where Joe taught me breathing techniques to calm the chaos inside me. He never pushed me to shift, just to connect with my wolf, to stop seeing her as an enemy. She's not separate from you, he said one evening as we sat on the fortress walls watching the sunset. She's not something broken that needs fixing. She's you, Sarah. The parts of yourself you've been afraid to acknowledge. His words settled into my chest like stones dropping into still water. On the 7th day something changed. We were sparring in the yard, moving faster now, my body finally remembering rhythms it had never been taught. Joe came at me with a high strike and instead of blocking I ducked under his guard and swept his legs. He hit the ground hard. The entire yard went silent. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Kira, who'd been sharpening her blade nearby, actually laughed. I stared at Joe sprawled in the dust, my practice sword still raised, hardly believing what I'd done. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. Joe started laughing. Deep, genuine laughter that transformed his usually stern face into something younger, lighter. He held up a hand and I pulled him to his feet, my heart hammering. "Don't you dare apologize," he said, still gripping my hand. That was perfect. We stood there, closer than we'd been since that first desperate kiss, and I realized his thumb was tracing small circles on my wrist. His amber eyes held mine, something shifting in them that made my breath catch. "Sarah," he said quietly, and my name in his voice sounded like a prayer. Then Marcus's sharp whistle cut through the moment. "Your Majesty, we have a problem." Joe didn't release my hand immediately, his jaw tightening with frustration. "What now?" "Riders approaching from the south. Flying Andrea colors." Marcus's expression was grim. "Matthew's father is here and he's brought the entire merchant council with him." Lord Andreas was a bear of a man with silver streaking his dark hair and Matthew's same calculating eyes. He stood in Joe's great hall flanked by 5 council members, each representing the realm's most powerful merchant families. Behind them, Matthew lurked like a shadow, his expression carefully neutral except for the hatred burning in his gaze when it landed on me. "Alpha King," Lord Andreas began, his voice carrying the weight of old money and older bloodlines. "We come in peace, seeking clarification on a matter of grave concern to the realm's stability." Joe sat on his throne, relaxed but radiating the kind of power that made even Lord Andreas choose his next words carefully. I stood beside Marcus near the wall, trying to make myself invisible. "Speak plainly, Andreas. I have little patience for political theater." "Very well." Lord Andreas gestured to Matthew. "My son claims you've taken his betrothed under false pretenses. More troubling are the rumors spreading through every pack in the kingdom, that this woman has bewitched you, that she carries a cursed bloodline, that her very presence threatens the stability of the realm." "Rumors," Joe said coldly, "tend to spread when certain parties have coin to distribute and lies to tell. Are you accusing my family?" "I'm stating facts." Joe leaned forward. "Your son is spreading poison because I claimed protection over a wolf he abused. Tell me, Lord Andreas, does the Merchant Council now dictate whom the Alpha King may or may not protect?" One of the other council members, a thin woman with hawk-like features, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we must consider the broader implications. This woman's bloodline, if the stories are true." "What stories?" Joe's voice could have cut steel. "That she's silver-born," the woman said, and the room went deathly quiet. "That she carries the same bloodline that destroyed the Eastern Territories 3 centuries ago. That she cannot control her power and poses a danger to everyone near her." I felt the blood drain from my face. How did they know? The oracle's visit had been secret, only Joe's inner circle present. Unless. Matthew's smile was subtle, but I caught it. Someone had talked. Someone in the fortress had betrayed us. "The Silverborn are extinct," Marcus said firmly. "Are they?" Lord Andreas pulled a scroll from his coat. "We have testimony from 3 separate sources, healers, historians, scholars, all confirming the signs. The incomplete shifts, the silver light, the ancient power locked away. Your Majesty, we understand you meant well, but this woman is a weapon that could destroy us all." "She's not a weapon," Joe said, each word deliberate. "She's under my protection." "Then you leave us no choice." The hawk-faced woman's expression was almost sympathetic. "The Merchant Council, in accordance with the old laws, calls for an emergency session of the Grand Council. We demand you renounce your claim on Sarah Peters and surrender her to proper custody where her power can be contained." "Contained?" Joe's laugh was void of humor. "You mean imprisoned? Used? Perhaps sold to the highest bidder?" "We mean protected," Lord Andreas said smoothly. "Protected from herself and others protected from her. Surely you see the wisdom in this, Your Majesty. One woman is not worth risking the entire realm." Joe stood and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Get out of my fortress." "Your Majesty." The Grand Council will convene in 3 days as the law requires. Until then you will leave. Now. His eyes found Matthew. And tell your son that if he sets foot on my lands again, I'll consider it an act of war. Lord Andreas opened his mouth to protest, but the other council members were already backing toward the door. They knew a losing battle when they saw one. After they left, Joe turned to Marcus. Find the leak. Someone told them about the oracle. Already on it, Marcus said grimly. Joe's eyes found mine across the hall. Sarah, I need you too. The explosion rocked the fortress, sending stone and dust raining down from the ceiling. Screams echoed from somewhere below. Marcus was already moving. The armory's been hit. Fire spreading fast. Through the chaos, I caught one last glimpse of Matthews retreating back in the courtyard below. He wasn't running from the explosion. He was watching it burn and he was smiling. The Grand Council convened in the ancient chamber beneath the Capitol, a circular room carved from white stone where every Alpha House had sent their representatives. I sat beside Joe on the raised platform, wearing a borrowed gown of deep gray that Kira had insisted made me look less like a victim and more like a queen. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Matthew stood before the council in formal dress, every inch the concerned citizen. Lord Andreas sat among the council members, his face a mask of paternal worry. They'd planned this perfectly. I present evidence of instability and danger, Matthew began, his voice carrying false sorrow. He gestured and a healer I didn't recognize stepped forward. Master Cornelius has examined records of Sarah Peters' condition. Tell the council what you found. The healer unrolled a parchment. The subject demonstrates classic signs of volatile magic syndrome. Incomplete transformations, uncontrolled power surges, documented incidents of. Documented by whom? Joe interrupted coldly. By me, Matthew said. During our relationship I kept records of her episodes. Times she nearly hurt herself. Times her power lashed out unpredictably. He produced a leather journal and my stomach dropped. I loved her. I tried to help her. But she's dangerous and now she's influenced the Alpha King himself. Influenced. Joe's voice was lethal. Bewitched, Lord Andreas said bluntly. Your Majesty, with respect, your behavior since encountering this woman has been erratic. The sudden claim, the protection, the isolation in your fortress. How dare you? We found bodies, another council member interrupted. 3 guards dead in the fortress attack 3 days ago. Killed by silver light that burned from the inside out. The same signature as the ancient Silver-born massacres. Ice flooded my veins. I wasn't even near the armory. The evidence suggests otherwise, Matthew said softly, looking at me with perfectly crafted pity. Sarah, I know you don't mean to hurt people. That's why you need help. Proper containment, proper training. Proper control, you mean, Kira snarled from her seat. You want her as a weapon. We want everyone safe, Lord Andreas stood. The council has heard enough. We vote now on whether to separate Sarah Peters from the Alpha King's protection and place her in secure custody. You have no authority, Joe started. The old laws grant us authority in matters of realm security, the hawk-faced woman said. All in favor of separation and containment? Hands rose around the circle. Too many hands. Joe's power filled the room, making even the oldest alphas flinch. I will not. The window exploded inward. 3 wolves, larger than natural, crashed through in a spray of glass and stone. Their eyes glowed red, blood rage, the forbidden drug that turned wolves into mindless killers. Behind them came 2 figures in black, blades drawn, moving with the precision of trained assassins. They went straight for Joe. Down. Marcus roared, shoving council members aside. Steel rang against steel. Someone screamed. One of the blood-raged wolves lunged for the platform, jaws wide. And something inside me snapped. I felt the cage around my wolf shatter like glass. Power exploded outward from my skin, silver light blazing bright enough to blind. The wolf froze mid-leap, suspended in the air by light that poured from my hands like living starlight. No, I heard myself say, my voice echoing with power that wasn't entirely mine. You don't touch him. The wolf crashed to the ground, whimpering. The assassins spun toward me, weapons raised. Behind them I saw Matthew's face, shock warring with triumph. He'd planned this. The attack, the timing, Everything designed to either kill Joe or prove I was the monster he'd claimed. But I wasn't broken anymore. The silver light spread across the room like dawn breaking, and for the first time in my life, I felt my wolf surge forward without pain, without fear, without the cage that had held her prisoner. She was magnificent. She was fury and starlight and ancient power. He was mine. One of the assassins lunged. I moved without thinking, pure instinct guiding my hand. Light blazed from my palm and he went flying, slamming into the wall hard enough to crack stone. The second assassin grabbed Matthew, blade pressed to his throat, but the fear in his eyes was real. He hadn't expected this. Hadn't expected me to break free. "Call them off," Joe commanded, blood running from a cut on his temple, his sword at the ready. Or I let her finish what they started. For a long moment no one moved. Then Matthew raised his hand and the remaining wolves backed down, blood rage fading from their eyes. The silver light still poured from my skin, waiting ready. And in that moment, every wolf in the chamber understood. The prophecy was real. And I was awake. The remaining assassin released Matthew and lunged not at Joe but at me, a desperate final attempt. My body reacted before my mind could process. The silver light condensed, focused, became something more than just energy. It became me. The shift happened in a heartbeat. No pain, no freezing, no cage. Just pure, fluid transformation that felt like coming home after a lifetime of exile. My bones reformed, my senses sharpened to impossible clarity, and when I opened my eyes, the world had changed. I stood on 4 legs, my fur gleaming like moonlight made solid. Every wolf in the chamber had fallen silent, staring. Even the blood-raged wolves cowered, whimpering as ancient instinct recognized what stood before them. The assassin froze, his blade clattering to the floor. I was massive, larger than any normal wolf, my coat pure silver that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. Power hummed through my muscles, centuries of dormant strength finally unleashed. I could feel the weight of every gaze, the fear and wonder mixing in the air like smoke. The second assassin tried to run. I moved faster than thought, my body a blur of silver and starlight. I pinned him with one paw, and where my fur touched his skin, silver light spread like frost, locking him in place without harming him. Not a weapon. A guardian. The last blood-raged wolf snarled, made one final desperate charge at Joe. I was there before it completed 2 steps, placing myself between them. I didn't attack, didn't kill. I simply stood there, and the silver light that poured from my form made the wolf stumble and collapse, the blood rage burning out of its system like poison meeting sunlight. Then I turned toward Matthew. He'd backed against the wall, all his careful composure shattered. This was what he'd wanted, my power awakened, but not like this. Not free. Not in control. Not mine to command. I padded toward him slowly, letting him see what he'd tried to cage, what he'd tried to break and reshape into his weapon. Every step made him flinch. I could smell his fear, acrid and sharp. "This is what you were afraid of," I wanted to say. Not that I was broken, but that I never was. I stopped inches from him, close enough that my breath stirred his hair. He pressed himself against the stone, trembling. For 2 years he'd made me feel small, worthless, afraid. Now he understood what it meant to be powerless. I held his gaze for one long moment, then turned away. He wasn't worth my vengeance. Joe stood near the platform, blood still trickling from his temple, his sword lowered. His amber eyes met mine across the destroyed chamber, and I saw no fear there. Only wonder and something deeper, something that made my wolf sing with recognition. "Sarah," he whispered, and even in this form I heard the reverence in his voice. I moved toward him and the council members scattered, giving me space. Only Joe stood his ground. When I reached him he slowly extended his hand, giving me the choice. I pressed my silver muzzle against his palm. His fingers buried in my fur, and I felt the bond between us solidify into something unbreakable. Not possession. Partnership. He'd promised to help me heal, to give me freedom, and he'd kept that promise. Now I was choosing him in return. The silver light pulsed once, bright enough to light the entire chamber, then faded to a gentle glow. I shifted back to human form, the transformation smooth and painless. Kira was there instantly with a cloak, wrapping it around my shoulders. I stood before the council, no longer the frightened woman who'd begged a stranger to save her. "The vote," I said, my voice steady. "Let's finish it." Lord Andreas looked pale. The hawk-faced woman stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Around the circle, the raised hands lowered one by one. All opposed to separation and containment? Joe asked, his hand finding mine. Every single hand rose. Matthew made a sound like a wounded animal. No. No, she's mine. Take him, Marcus commanded, and guards moved forward. Matthew, Andrea, you stand accused of conspiracy, attempted assassination of the Alpha King, and use of blood rage. A capital offense. You'll be tried and sentenced according to realm law. They dragged Matthew away screaming threats, promises that this wasn't over, that I belonged to him, that he'd find a way. His voice faded down the corridor and silence fell. Joe turned to me, still holding my hand. Are you hurt? I shook my head, tears suddenly burning my eyes. Not from pain or fear, but from the overwhelming realization that I was free. Truly, finally free. Sarah, Joe said softly and then louder, addressing the council, let it be known. Sarah Peters is under my protection, not as a prisoner or a weapon, but as your equal, I interrupted, finding my voice. As your partner. If you'll have me. His smile was like sunrise breaking over mountains. If I'll have you, Sarah, The chamber doors burst open. Elena ran in, her face ashen. Your Majesty. Marcus. We have a problem. Another one? Kira groaned. The fortress. Elena's hands shook. While you were here, it was attacked again. Not with explosives this time. She looked at me, fear and apology mixing in her eyes. They took something. Someone. My blood turned to ice. Who? The Oracle, Elena whispered. Matthew's forces took the Oracle. And they left a message. She held out a blood-stained parchment. Joe took it, his expression darkening with every word. When he finished reading, he looked at me with something close to despair. They want to trade, he said. The Oracle's life for yours. 3 days. Or they kill her and release information about your bloodline to every enemy pack in the realm. The silver light flickered under my skin, angry, protective. Matthew might be in chains, but his father wasn't. And Lord Andreas had just declared war. I went alone. Joe fought me on it, of course. Marcus argued tactical disadvantages. Kira called me 7 kinds of stupid. But in the end they understood. Lord Andreas wanted to see if I'd trade myself for the Oracle. He wanted proof I could be controlled, manipulated, that beneath the silver wolf, I was still the broken thing Matthew had shaped. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The exchange point was a clearing in the neutral woods, surrounded by Andreas guards. Lord Andreas stood in the center, the Oracle bound beside him, her blind eyes somehow finding me as I emerged from the trees. Alone as requested, I said. Release her. Not quite yet. Lord Andreas smiled, the same calculating expression his son wore. First you'll submit to binding runes. We can't have you. The silver light erupted from my skin like a star going nova. I'd spent 3 days training with Elena, learning to channel rather than suppress. The power that had terrified me now sang in my veins like coming home. I didn't attack, didn't harm. I simply let them see what I truly was. Every guard dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by the ancient dominance of silver-born bloodline. Lord Andreas stumbled backward, his face ashen. You don't get to bind me, I said, my voice carrying the weight of centuries. You don't get to cage me or trade me or use me. Those days are over. I walked past the kneeling guards and cut the Oracle's bonds with a blade of concentrated silver light. She gripped my arm, her strength surprising. The choice is made, she whispered. The prophecy fulfilled. Not by force but by freedom. Behind Andreas, shadows moved. Joe stepped out of the trees, Marcus and Kira flanking him, along with 50 royal guards. They'd followed despite my orders because that's what partners did. Lord Andreas, Joe's voice was granite. You have one chance to surrender peacefully. Andreas looked at his kneeling guards, at me radiating power he couldn't touch, at the Alpha King's army surrounding him. His empire of manipulation crumbled in real time. Matthew was right, he spat. You're a monster. No, I said simply. I'm free. There's a difference. They took him in chains. 3 weeks later, I stood before the Grand Council in a gown that Kira had commissioned. Silver thread woven through midnight blue silk that caught the light with every movement. My hair was braided with silver ribbons, and for the first time in my life I wore it loose and unashamed. The council chamber was packed. Every alpha house, every territory representative, hundreds of wolves gathered to witness this moment. Joe stood beside me in formal armor, but this time I wasn't behind him or beside him as decoration. I was equal. The crimes of House Andreas have been proven, Joe announced. Matthew Andrea is exiled for life. Lord Andreas stripped of title and lands, imprisoned for conspiracy and attempted murder. Their house falls. A murmur ran through the crowd. The merchant council looked uncomfortable. They'd backed the wrong wolves. Joe turned to me. Sarah Peters has proven herself beyond any doubt. She is silver-born, keeper of an ancient bloodline, and more importantly, she is a wolf who chose freedom over fear, partnership over possession. He held out his hand. The question now is what comes next. This was the moment we'd discussed in private. He'd offered me everything, title, protection, wealth, and told me I could walk away from all of it if I chose. No judgment, no consequences. True freedom. I took his hand and faced the council. I was told I was broken, I said, my voice steady. I was told I was worthless, that no one would want me, that I should be grateful for scraps of affection mixed with abuse. I believed those lies because I didn't know better. I paused, letting my words settle. But I'm not broken. I never was. And there are others out there, wolves who've been told they're too weak, too different, too wrong to matter. This ends now. Joe squeezed my hand, his pride evident. I stand before you not as a victim to be pitied or a weapon to be feared, but as a wolf claiming her own power. Joe Nightclaw offered me protection when I had nowhere else to turn. He kept his promises. He helped me heal, trained me to be strong, gave me the freedom to choose my own path. I turned to him, meeting those amber eyes that had seen me at my worst and best. And I choose him. Not because I'm desperate or grateful or bound by political necessity. I choose him because he chose to see me as an equal when the world saw me as less. The silver light pulsed once beneath my skin, gentle, affirming. If the council will accept it, I continued, I claim my place as Joe's mate and partner. Not as a symbolic gesture or political tool but as queen in my own right. Together we will reform the laws that allow wolves to be abused, that judge worth by strength alone, that cage and control rather than nurture and protect. Silence, heavy and expectant. Then Marcus stepped forward and dropped to one knee. I accept Sarah Peters as queen. Kier followed. As do I. Elena. The royal guard. One by one, wolves throughout the chamber knelt until only the council members remained standing. The hawk-faced woman, Counselor Thorne, studied me for a long moment, then smiled. The realm could use a queen who understands what it means to rise from the ashes. I accept. The remaining council members followed. Joe pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine. Are you sure? He whispered, too quiet for anyone else to hear. You could still walk away. I meant what I said. I know, I whispered back. That's exactly why I'm staying. The coronation happened at sunset, the sky painted in gold and crimson. They placed a crown of silver and sapphires on my head, not delicate but strong, forged from the same metal as Joe's own crown. When Joe spoke the formal words of bonding, his hand steady in mine, I felt the mate bond snap into place. Not a cage but a bridge between two equals choosing each other freely. The silver wolf and the alpha king, the oracle proclaimed, her blind eyes somehow bright with joy. United not by prophecy or force, but by the most powerful magic of all, choice. That night, standing on the fortress walls with Joe's arm around my waist, I watched the stars emerge one by one. Somewhere out there, wolves who'd been told they were broken would hear my story. Would know that broken was just a lie told by those who feared what they couldn't control. No regrets. Joe asked softly. I thought about the terrified woman who'd begged a stranger to kiss her, who'd been so desperate to escape her past she'd bound herself to a future she couldn't see. Then I thought about who I'd become, not despite the pain but through the healing that came after. Not a single one, I said and meant it. The silver light pulsed once beneath my skin, content home free. And the story of the broken Omega who became a queen was just beginning. And the story of the broken Omega who became a queen was just beginning. The pack has spoken and Sarah claimed her destiny. But every ending is just a new beginning. The Andrea family may be defeated, but there are other threats lurking in the shadows. Rival packs who fear the silver-born, ancient enemies who remember what her bloodline can do, and secrets about Sarah's heritage that even she doesn't know yet. What happens when Sarah discovers she's not the last Silverborn after all? What if Matthew escapes his exile and returns with dark magic? And who is the mysterious wolf who's been watching the Nightclaw Fortress from the mountains? The next chapter of this saga drops soon and you won't want to miss it. If you want to find out what happens next, if you need to know whether Sarah and Joe's bond can survive what's coming, then make sure you're subscribed because the next video is going to change everything. Click that next video now and continue the journey. The Silver Wolf story is far from over and the best is yet to come. Your pack is waiting. Will you run with us? See you in the next one, Wolf Pack.